and shipping of narcotics, as I'm sure we'll get.
Well, yeah, let me start there. So, Cartel de los Soles is not a cartel that has been spoken a lot on this show. I've heard it in passing. We had a couple conversations with others, but what can you tell the audience about this cartel and how it's different from the Mexican cartel or similar?
Yeah, a lot of people don't really understand, and when they look at Venezuela, now we have a lot more highlighting of Venezuela with the Tren de Aragua, right? So
Right.
Tren de Aragua, the gang, they're coming, they're chopping people's fingers off, they're kidnapping, they're killing, doing all these crazy things, right? And people kind of paid attention a little bit to Venezuela. Well, Venezuela is about 1,400 miles off the coast of Florida. Okay. Venezuela geopolitically has a very large presence when you look at it macro to micro. Let's go back and come out a little bit. We have Russia, we have China, we have Iran, we have proxies that train inside of Venezuela. We had Venezuela back in the day that was issuing their passport to a variety of people from nefarious action states in the Middle East, for example, right? And they would give background passports, like from infancy with birth certificates all the way through college in a stack and give it to them. And then they get a Venezuelan passport. Well, remember back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the Venezuelan passport was valuable, right? Now it's not very valuable, but for many, many years it was. And once you get that Venezuelan passport back in, say, 2000, you can go pretty much anywhere you wanted to. So what happened was you started having this crime dynamic within the country, the corruption that kind of bled over with the Hugo Chavez, who then became the president of the country. And he had been in prison because he did a, coup d'etat and he tried to take the country over and he was thrown in prison. Fast forward 6 years, what do? They pardon him. He's out in jail, and then he runs for president. He wins. And this is where you start looking at the Cartel de los Soles because the Chavez regime wanted to take the United States and subvert it in many ways. One of the biggest ways was we're going to flood it with cocaine, we're going to flood it with narcotics, and we're going to, basically destroy the fabric of the United States of America in that aspect, right? Course, they're going to send spies. They're going to do all this other stuff, but they are positioned in in a region of the world in the Western Hemisphere where you have source country for cocaine. You have Colombia right next door, and what's in Colombia? The FARC, right? The armed forces, of Colombia. It's like a little. How can you put it in terms of what we would think in the United States? You have this group that says we're being undermined, kind of like an Antifa, but on steroids. And they want to take over because they feel they're being wronged in the country and they have to make money. So what do? So many of these criminal groups, they exploit the cocaine trade. And then you have, everything, from all the Colombian cocaine kingpins back in the day with Javier Pena, Steve Murphy, Chris Feistel, Dave Mitchell, all those DEA agents investigating these big narcos. Come back now again, knowing that you have all these huge cocaine sources in that region. Chavez says to himself, "Hey, self, I can help them. I can harbor these fugitives of justice because as they're committing crimes, the Colombian government saying we're going to arrest them and send them to the United States, right? We've seen this in the movies, when you're looking at all the cartels, they were all facing extradition to the United States. They didn't want that because in Colombia they could have a nice little tennis court, they could have their booze, cable TV, the whole thing, and enjoy life,
Nice
right?
prison.
That's the way it was. Well, so they in Venezuela, they just pay a little bit of money and they're going to live the good life, right? Under the radar there and basically under the wing of the Chavez government. So then you start having all these military individuals in the structure of the government becoming involved because everyone wants a little mordita, a little bit of bite of the apple, right? Because they want to make money. And it evolved into this thing called the Carta de los Soles, where our generals have, you have, stars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and then you have colonels and so forth. Well, the generals in Venezuela have little sons, soles, right? And that's where the Cartel de los Soles came into, but it kind of proliferated into government members. You have the president you have the vice president, you have all the military commanders, and then you have figures that are way below captains, lieutenants, police officers, police chiefs. Everyone got involved in this. And as we fast forward through the 2 decades of Hugo Chavez, it turned into a behemoth. And they're sending tens of thousands of metric tons of cocaine to the United States through Venezuela. Ships, LPVs, aircraft, you name it, it's coming to the United States from Venezuela.
If you think it might rain later, then all you need is this bearskin heavy storm rain jacket. That's because this is the only hiking grade packable rain jacket that's versatile enough to cover and protect any regular outfit, but strong enough to handle a heavier rainstorm when you're outdoors.
This is the only 5-pocket rain jacket that comes with a 10,000 millimeter heavy storm waterproof rating to keep you 100% dry, wherever you are. Thousands of men around.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've never heard this side of the story because so much is focused on Mexico and just, in that space. I looked a little bit up on it and it was just interesting to see. And you explained it really well. How did, when you were out there in your work, how big of an impact was that making in some of your investigation or some of the work you were doing? I know you can't talk heavily about what was going on, but their imprint compared to what you see in the Mexican cartels, is it pretty heavily established within the government, kind of like the corruption side of the Mexican cartel? I'm very curious of how similar they work, or is it very different in how they kind of use their power?
So the mechanics of how things operate are the same anywhere you go, right? You're like, well, are you an SMA on this? Well, yeah, but you know what? Anyone could be. Once you get the model, it's the same model for all of these things, right? In a sense, but we to put it in perspective of where they're located, and it's a transit country. Okay, they're not producing the cocaine there. They're not doing the labs there per se. That's in the Colombian end, and because they're neighbors, the FARC will use all the coca production, heroin, obviously the amapola, and they make the heroin and so forth. They bring it down the rivers. They use the geography to bring it right to Venezuela. That's where the Venezuelan military will grab it, bring it into Venezuela. Now it's safe. Now you don't have to worry about anything because it's blessed. The Monsignor has said, go forth and multiply, guys. It's not a problem, okay? They bring it in. They arrange the aircraft. They arrange military shipping. You'll have military trucks or police trucks transiting all this dope to where it's got to go in these airstrips. And then you would have thousands of flights a year leaving, or maritime vessels that would take off, right? So the mechanics is pretty much the same for any kind of transit country. But when you're looking at, you have basically a country from the top down to the street level guys that are capitalizing on it. And it's kind of similar in a sense when you look at Mexico, right? But they're not our border, right? But
Right.
borders are not as stretched as they used to be anymore, because in 2025, it doesn't take much for me to send 4 tons of cocaine to Central America. It doesn't take really that much of a difference from 2015 to 2025 to send it to the Caribbean corridor. We have a compressed border because what's going on, but we've seen this before. Again, the cycles, the sets are all the same. You squeeze the southwest border, what happens? You kind of trend to move it to the Caribbean, right? You have some play in Canada, a very small amount when it comes to fentanyl. You're talking, I think they seized 49 kilos last year. You have less than 1% of all seizure of fentanyl that goes through Canada. But what you have in Canada, and it's important because we have, the border is not just southern border. We're dealing with it all, right? We're dealing north-south, and really, even though we don't have territory per se, we kind of do, but we have east and west because it's all maritime, right? But so Canada is, a first world country that can help us combat, right? Even though they are ill-placed to kind of fight it because they're kind of, I don't want to say weak, but I'm going to say weak, okay? Unfortunately, Canada, they have some great strong points to them, but when it comes to heavy-duty law enforcement,
Weak.
and what's driving a lot of crime is this expansion of the Mexican cartels into Canada, and the motorcycle clubs and the alliances that are starting to take place up there, right? Okay. But in the scheme of things, Canada is very, very small. It's in an infancy stage of expansion. So now is the time to strike and cut that snake's head off beforehand. But as we move back to the southern border and we kind of piece this apart, and you look at Venezuela, and going back to the original question, now that we've kind of gone the macro micro on it, their job is to provide a safe haven for all this cocaine that's transiting, but not just cocaine. We're talking criminal elements. And that's what was happening when I was down there. My job was to go down there, try to infiltrate into these organizations. And the organizations are the government heads, right? So I'm down there working with generals, meeting with these guys that are going to be indicted or have been indicted. And I have to have a poker face, right? I know what they're doing. I'm trying to gain evidence, right? I'm trying to find fugitives. We arrested 4 CPOTs, which is 4 kingpins when I was down there. So we wanted to eliminate the structure of their safe haven for the criminals. And we wanted to identify how they're transiting the cocaine, where they're transiting it. And third, we want to develop informants. We want to get people that can cooperate, and we want to make cases in the United States. So that's Venezuela's role in this whole thing.
That's pretty good.
And I hope that answered your question.
All right, now I'm going to just switch to the other thing that you wanted me to post, and it's our friend, the Orange Man. Gotta love this guy sometimes.
So, Baker, I just have a question. Look at
Andrea, please. That's not helping right now.
do what we did. But he gave us a little bit of a briefing, and you'll see. And there's more where that came from. We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time. And we just, these came out of Venezuela and coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So we took it out, and you'll get to see that after this meeting is over. Do you have any questions, please? I just want.
Okay. I think.
we got from Venezuela.
Yeah.
How did we get to a narco-terror country to Donald Trump using SOCOM military forces to take out a drug runner? A lot of controversy. The left is going crazy. They're apoplectic. They're pro-clutching regarding using the military in this aspect. But as we go through tonight, I think you're going to find out there's probably justification here. And there is legal justification to do what was done despite what you're hearing in the media. So I just want to reset before we go into this with, please, number one, go to my profile very quickly because I have 8 slides there. And it's going to be a to walk you through it. But I think the slide last time I did that people on the slide. And I'm very slide example I do it for the geographic in a I kind of why it's important. And if you take a look at that margarita,
Isla Margarita. Isla Margarita. We got to work on your accent, brother. You're such a dreamer.
So if you can go to your file, take a look at the slide that you want to grab quick, and 30 minutes for you as you weed through the news media and their absolute incredulousness over taking out drug runners using the military. We'll explain to you why it's important, why that took place, and where we are today from where we were. So, and Andrea, you had something that you wanted to interject first before I started?
Yeah, let's just kind of set the stage rules at the moment before you start. Um, BJ, do you want to bring any speakers up? And also, from the way we've ran the spaces before, Ron's going to be giving his presentation, and then questions will be available and hopefully we can answer them.
Yeah, let's
let Ron do his thing.
Somebody else is
Somebody else is
requesting.
requesting.
I'll add them,
But everybody just
let's wait till
Ron is
finished walking us
through everything because
it can be quite
complicated if you're not familiar with Latin America.
And
So let's let him do his thing, and then we'll get into some
Q and A.
And
Matt's
good to have you here as well, brother.
And
then we'll just go through some of the details and ask Ron specific questions.
And I'm just
trying to do my best to get the slides up here on YouTube and whatever. So
without all of this crashing. So if it doesn't crash, then you got to give me some credit. Okay, Ron, go ahead, brother.
All right. Real quickly, just a 30-second intro for those who don't know me. I was a former police officer for 21 years. I worked almost a half a decade in counter narcotics in law enforcement, local, state, federal task forces. I did deploy to Afghanistan once as a green shooter in the U.S. Army as an intelligence analyst, and 2 more as a DIA or Defense Intelligence Agency contractor. My last one was in Kabul, working directly with the Drug Enforcement Administration, working the counter narcotics / narco-terrorism problem set in Afghanistan and all of Southwest Asia. We were responsible for Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. So that's just a real brief background on who I am and what I've done regarding narco-terrorism or counter narcotics in my career. So if we got the slides up, if you don't, we're talking about Venezuela, which is at the top central part of South America. There's an island kind of centrally located about 100 kilometers maybe off of the coast named Margarita Island. I want everybody to remember Margarita Island. From that island, it's about 1,500 miles to the Florida coast via boat. And I put up there a 2020 slide from the Federal Bureau of Investigation at the end of President Trump's first term. There was a lot of discussion on Venezuela, its narco-terrorism connections, its government connections with narco-terrorists, and how the government itself was nothing more than a crime syndicate, much like Afghanistan has turned into under the Taliban. Their primary goal is to make billions and billions of dollars through illicit means. And it's not just cocaine or heroin. We're talking about human trafficking, illegal gold mining, etc. But their goal is to make billions of dollars and at the same time undercut the United States and Canadian governments, the Western democracy / capitalist governments, to the best of their ability. Maduro has actually spoken publicly about this. Unfortunately, when Trump left office, the Biden administration moved to lift a lot of the sanctions under the promise that Nicolas Maduro, of all people, would hold free and fair elections. That was what we were dealing with for 4 years under the Biden administration. If we're kind to them and nice to them, maybe they'll be nice back to us. That's how they handled Maduro and Venezuela. And if you look back at that slide at 2020, that's put together by the FBI. It's a link diagram showing all of the government officials involved in the nefarious activity. Maduro had a $15 million reward on him. The latest reward has gone up to $50 million on Nicolas Maduro, the largest reward ever offered by the United States government for a nefarious actor that we want in custody. That's how bad we want Nicolas Maduro. The next slide is a very quick ocean diagram put together by the Atlantic Council, which utilizes open source information to provide an excellent outlay of the nefarious actors in Venezuela. And I have three circled there. We're going to go through all three very quickly. But these names are extremely important. It's Tariq al-Assami, who we'll go through next. Ghazi Nassereddin. That's a pseudonym. He is a massive key player. Those two together are the ones that built Hezbollah inside of Venezuela. And then Ayman Saad Joma. Next slide is Tariq Zaidan al-Assami Mata. Sounds like a typical Colombian name or Venezuelan name, right? It's not. This is a man whose mother was Lebanese, father is Syrian. His father was the head of the local Iraqi Ba'athist party in Venezuela after they had moved there. And he had a lot of connects back to the Middle East. He's also an avowed Islamist. He publicly proclaimed bin Laden as the great Mujahideen. Tarek was mentored in college by Hugo Chavez's brother, Aiden, who was a professor in his college. And by the early 2000s, via his father's Middle East connections, became the Venezuelan main point of contact with leaders from Syria, Lebanon, for Hamas and Hezbollah, Jordan, Iran, and Iraq. And he was the Arab reference point for Latin America. He was able to develop a very sophisticated financial network and multi-level networks, criminal terrorist pipeline to bring Islamic militants from the Middle East into Venezuela and then into neighboring countries, and then to elicit funds from Latin America to the Middle East. He got as high as the Minister of Interior for Venezuela between 2008 and 2012, where he was the point of contact for all Middle Eastern extremists. He helped provide Venezuelan IDs, documents, and passports to Hezbollah Lebanese terrorists. Those were used, as we said before, regarding the United States and Canada. They were used for movement into the U.S. Leaked documents show confirmed actual names of 175 Hezbollah militants that moved into the United States using these documents. Now, there are probably 10 times that amount. We're probably talking well over 1,000 Hezbollah militants were moved this way, but in one leaked document, they were able to identify 175 names utilizing the fake information, the fake passports to move into the United States for operations. Things went sideways, though. There was a little bit of internal political issues. And in 2023, he disappeared, wasn't found. And then about a year later, April 9th, 2024, Venezuelan prosecutors announced they had arrested him for quote-unquote public corruption. Sounds like there was some internal political, let's just say machinations going on between Maduro's side and some others, and they were doing some house cleaning. And Tariq ended up being part of that house cleaning. I think he's still incarcerated to this day. Then the next slide is Ghazi Nasir al-Din. He and his three brothers are the ones who literally built from the ground up Hezbollah inside Venezuela. Another Lebanese born in Beirut, came in 2000, quickly established a relationship with Tarek, and by 2005, he was already the charge d'affaires for the Venezuelan embassy in Damascus. At that point, he was able to issue over that 3-year period over 20,000 passports from Syria into Venezuela. At the same period of time, he began purchasing multiple properties on Venezuela's Margarita Island. Then he became the director of political aspects at the Venezuelan embassy, and then worked directly with a major cocaine kingpin, Walid Markel, who was later arrested in Colombia. 10 tons of cocaine a month into the United States, and one of their top Venezuelan political appointees was working directly with him. He also brokered a 2009 meeting between Hezbollah operatives and Tariq, which resulted in a 2014 cocaine for weapons deal between Hezbollah and the FARC. Hezbollah brought a large cargo plane full of small arms to Caracas. So that's how they got armed. Through an arms for cocaine trade. Plane flies in to Caracas full of small and medium arms and ammunition. And it's game on inside Venezuela with Hezbollah. So Ghazi and his 3 brothers built a major foreign stronghold there, using billions of laundered money via the trade of illicit narcotics, the vast majority going to the United States, some going to Canada, and some actually ended up in Europe. Now, the next slide is a little bit complicated, and I'm going to have BJ walk through the most important part here. But a third party named
Ron.
Which
slide
slide
do you want? Name the slide.
Because
Next slide doesn't
Venezuelan money laundering. It is a link diagram that I put together. It's a black background with a lot of different icons and entities. We're only going to talk through a very small portion of it.
I only have 4 documents.
I don't see them.
But okay. I'm just
going
going
off your Twitter post. That's all.
You have
4
4
Go to the next. Go to the first reply. That's where the next slide begins in that Twitter post.
All right. Well, we'll have to organize this different next time. But let me figure it out. Okay, go ahead. Keep talking.
Okay. If you check your WhatsApp, I gave you both posts with all.
I can't do that with the setup right now. That's the problem.
But
okay. All right. If you're lost, quick go to my.
No. I can't go anywhere. Multiple browsers open and multiple devices.
Yep.
So don't worry.
For everybody else.
Yep.
For everybody else, if you're lost, please go to the my post where. You can see all of the connections here, where we go from cocaine and gold money into blockchain crypto. We now have Hezbollah, one of the most powerful terrorist / narco-terrorist groups in the world that are making deals utilizing blockchain crypto, using Tether and the Tron network wallet. This money actually goes either directly to Hezbollah or through the Iranian IRGC, the Iranian Republican Guard Corps, their Quds force. So now we have Iran, because Iran's IRGC is a state-run organization. It's a military organization falling directly under the Ayatollah in Iran, and they are receiving drug funds, not only through the Afghanistan heroin trade, but also through the Venezuelan and Colombian drug trade with Mexican cartels and the Cartel de las Solas and Tren de Agua. If you take a look underneath the primary figure, Tawfiq Mohammed Syed Allah, you will see Cartel de los Solos, and I put up there, that is their rank. They have official rank. 4-star general, 3-star general, 2-star general, 1-star generals, lieutenants, captains, colonels. It was spoke of in the video for those of you who were got here a little bit late and didn't hear. But Cartel de los Solos, Cartel of the Suns, is a Venezuelan government entity. It's one of the few out there that is actually not just buying government officials, not just buying and bribing judges. They are literally part of the government of Venezuela. That's how tied into cocaine and heroin dealing the Venezuelan government is. So, BJ, did you want to talk through the Tether blockchain, crypto, and the Tron network, and how that operates and how that is very, very difficult to break through for law enforcement on the financial end?
Yeah, just very quickly, because I don't want to, distract from the broader mission of what we're trying to cover here. But basically, Tether is it's a stable coin, so it's pegged to the U.S. dollar. So it makes it very easy for in and out. It's an off ramp and an on and off ramp for money to move into the crypto world. Whether it be Bitcoin or crypto, which are very different things, altcoins versus Bitcoin. And what's interesting about Tether is Tether is buying U.S. treasuries with the blessing from the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government, because they can never find enough entities willing to buy treasuries so they can print more money. And here comes along Tether, who've created this pegged stablecoin, which allows the Fed to say, okay, great. We have another customer for treasuries beyond the commercial banking sector. And as a result, Tether has become, per employee, the most profitable company on the planet. They have something like 20 employees, and they make something like $80 billion a year, or some ridiculous amount of money, because there is such a need for U.S. treasuries, whether it's they go to U.S. dollar, euro dollar market, or various other entities. So that's Tether. Tether is just a pegged stable coin. Then, and by the way, that doesn't infer that anybody involved in Tether knows this is the use case, because Tether being a blockchain means they don't necessarily have any user data, so they don't know who actually uses it. Just like the Federal Reserve doesn't know who uses every one of their dollars that they printed, right? And then you have the Tron network, which is surprising. But Tron is a what's called another blockchain. They have their own token called Tron, and it's an exchange where you can go and exchange. There's something like 10,000 now altcoins in the space. I remember when there was 2. There's something like 10,000 altcoins, and they all get listed on the various exchanges. And that is owned by Justin Sun, who magically just became a billionaire out of nowhere. I don't know how much of a blessing he has from the Chinese government or not. My guess is there is a very tight relationship and a lot of money laundering involved, but I could be wrong. Justin is a Chinese national. And I remember when Tron was released a few years ago. So that's just one of the exchanges that also has its own token. One of the ones, a competitor you would have heard of before that was in the news was Binance, which was CZ. And he was very anti the communist government of China. His father was a Chinese dissident who escaped to Canada.
And it's
it's interesting that his blockchain and his exchange was deemed illegal in Canada, and he was brought up on charges by the SEC, although Tron wasn't for whatever reason. So that's just a short version. We can go into this. This could be hours-long conversation, but let's not take away from the more important message of what you're getting across.
Sure. The reason that I wanted to bring that up is because when we think of Hezbollah, often we think of, the yellow flag and the crossed AKs and guys in keffiyehs, etc. But the higher levels of Hezbollah and the cartels in South America and Mexico are sophisticated enough to move from the Hawala system, which we spoke of before, that's the Middle Eastern money exchange, to cryptocurrency to hide their transactions. How do they get the cash from the United States back to Venezuela? There was two individuals, the primary one by the name of Margarito Flores, who was working for El Chapo and the Sinaloa cartel in Chicago, Illinois. And for 10 years, he remained the primary cocaine distributor for the Sinaloa cartel in Chicago. In Chicago alone, they sent back $3 billion with a B dollars back to Mexico. How did they do it? They loaded up semi-trailers and drove it via truck across the border. He said it must have been hundreds and hundreds of trucks filled with cash sent across the border. Not a single one of those trucks was ever stopped, was ever searched. Not a single dime was ever seized. And that dirty money then gets laundered through multiple banks, including banks in Venezuela and worldwide when you're talking about crypto. And suddenly Hezbollah has got a cut of hundreds of millions of dollars to use as they see fit. That's why I believe that slide is extremely important, because it takes millions and millions of dollars to do what they did. Which brings us to the slide that shows Margarita Island and Ghazi Nasir al-Din, aka Ghazi Nasruddin. He and his two brothers, again, originally from the Middle East, originally from Beirut, Lebanon, moved into Venezuela. Ghazi ends up, as we said earlier, becoming a crucial part of the first government, and then the government under Nicolas Maduro. His two brothers, Abdallah Nasser al-Din, president of the Federation of Arab Entities of Latin America. During that tenure, Iranian influence, surprise, surprise, drastically expanded in South America.
Which year was that, Ron?
And he became the prominent go-between between Iran's IRGC Quds Force, which oversees quote-unquote foreign operations. That's what the Quds Force is the part of the IRGC that oversees the foreign operations, which includes Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis.
What year was that, Ron?
And his brother. What's that?
What year was that?
That would have been in probably the mid 2000s, 2007, 8.
Okay. Makes sense. Sorry about that. Go on.
Then in 2013, Ghazi and his brother O'Day traveled to Cancun, Mexico to meet with the Los Zetas drug cartel. And they're able to negotiate passage into the United States for Hezbollah agents in exchange for facilitating cocaine shipments into the Middle East. Again, narco-terror. That is the perfect definition of narco-terror right there. Margarita Island, probably paradise on earth. Venezuela, with their oil reserves, their gold reserves, their ability to produce food and agriculture in a perfect climate for agriculture, the tourists that they could bring in. People would love to generally live in an area like Venezuela. But it has turned into a crime syndicate, mafia don, cocaine, heroin transit point with cartels running the government, with Russian, Iranian, and Chinese assets all running through Venezuela at some point in time. There have been multiple reports of Iranian bombers that land at different airports within Venezuela on strategic runs. And it is in our general neighborhood. It's only 1,400 miles away from Florida. And the entire government is nothing more than a mafia, utilizing its proceeds and its ability to ship cocaine and heroin into the United States to usurp our citizens, our government, and our culture. And I notice he's not in tonight, but Zygos had mentioned publicly he believes that there could be as many as 10,000 Hezbollah operatives within the United States as we speak right now. 10,000 Hezbollah operatives smuggled, utilizing narcotics routes, cartels to get Hezbollah terrorists inside the United States. And then the final slide, and I don't really like reading, but I'm going to in this instance because I think it's important. I utilize the Tom Clancy novel and the movie Clear and Present Danger. If you haven't seen that movie or if you haven't read the book, most of you probably have. This is real life playing out, stranger than fiction, stranger than even what Tom Clancy could have thought of. And at the beginning of President Trump's second term, on March 15th, 2025, he put out a proclamation that stated as follows: Tren de Aragua, TDA, is a designated foreign terrorist organization with thousands of members, many of whom have unlawfully infiltrated the United States and are conducting irregular warfare and undertaking hostile actions against the United States. TDA operates in conjunction with the Cartel de las Solas, the Nicolas Maduro regime-sponsored narco-terrorism enterprise based in Venezuela, and commits brutal crimes, including murders, kidnapping, extortions, and human, drug, and weapons trafficking. TDA is engaged and continues to engage in mass illegal migration into the United States to further its objective of harming United States citizens, undermining public safety, and supporting the Maduro regime's goal of destabilizing democratic nations in the Americas, including the United States. TDA is closely aligned with and indeed has infiltrated the Maduro regime, including its military and law enforcement apparatus. TDA grew significantly while the Tarek el-Assimi served as governor of Aragua between 2012 and 2017. Tarek el-Assimi was appointed as vice president of Venezuela. Soon thereafter, the U.S. Department of Treasury designated him as a special designated narcotics trafficker under the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Designation Act. The vice president of Venezuela deemed a specially designated narcotics trafficker. Like Elisini, Maduro, who claims to act as Venezuela's president and asserts control over the security forces and other authorities of Venezuela, also maintains close ties to regime-sponsored narco-terrorists. Maduro leads the regime-sponsored enterprise Cartel de las Solas. Again, a drug cartel led by the president of a nation, which coordinates and relies on TDA and other organizations to carry out its objective of using illegal narcotics as a weapon to flood the United States, and I will add, and Canada. In 2020, Maduro and other regime members were charged with narco-terrorism and other crimes in connection with this plot against America. Finally, over the years, Venezuelan national and local authorities have ceded even greater control over their territories to transnational criminal organizations, including TDA. The result is a hybrid criminal state that is perpetrating an invasion of and predatory incursion into the United States, and which poses a substantial danger to the United States. Indeed, in December 2024, Interpol Washington confirmed Tren de Aragua has emerged as a significant threat to the United States as it infiltrates migration and flows from Venezuela. In other words, Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, Tren de Aragua, Cartel de las Solas, and everybody else mentioned presents a, quote, clear and present danger to the security of the United States of America. And it is under that premise in which that boat was attacked earlier this week and sunk. So that's the presentation. That gives you a background of where we got to where we are today. I don't know how many people actually read that invocation of the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the United States by Tren de Aragua. Again, it goes back to March 15th, and most Americans can't remember what they had for lunch, much less back to March 15th. But that was setting the stage. That was putting it out there. Clear and present danger.
All right.
All right. Well, that's
what
a real intelligence brief
like.
is like. well done.
And
yeah, it's
what
from your perspective, Ron, to the average person who doesn't understand, doesn't really engage in political issues, doesn't understand geopolitics, doesn't know where Venezuela is. What do you think? I asked this to district yesterday. What's the number one thing you would tell people why this is of vital importance and a security risk to the United States? Like, how does it affect them directly? Is it just instability, or increase in organized crime, increase in kidnappings, terrorist activities? Like, what's the number one thing in your opinion?
I think there's very few people on this stage listening in who will listen in later, or anybody in the United States of America that hasn't been touched by either cocaine, heroin, or fentanyl in some way, shape, or form, whether it's family members or friends or coworkers who have been addicted, people that they know that have overdosed, individuals that have absolutely ruined their life because once they get addicted to much of this, they absolutely have to hit rock bottom. There's only 3 ways out of addiction. That's prison, death, or rock bottom. So at the very core, at the very bottom of all of this, virtually every single American has been touched by narco-terrorism in some way, shape, or form. And if you move up the chain, it fuels. It's fuel. It's providing money to Islamic extremists who have no problem despite what they say with the Quran and the use of drugs and the sale of drugs and the production of drugs, have no problem sidling up to a group of individuals, cartel, narco traffickers, government officials, who are willing to use whatever means necessary to further their own agendas. And when those work together, they will work together themselves. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And then finally, hang on, Andrea. And then finally, the infiltration, not just of massive street gang members. I mean, we remember the Colorado Springs story of Trende Agua taking over an entire apartment complex by force, walking around with AK-47s. We saw the video, and the Democrats underplaying it. That's just one apartment complex. I think you remember when Vice President J.D. Vance was on Meet the Press, and he shook his head, and he goes, Andrea, I can't believe what I'm hearing. Ha! It's just one apartment complex. Are you even listening to yourself? All of these things from the street level all the way up to high level Islamic and high level street gang is all tied together. And if you don't take action, if you allow this to fester and continue, particularly as we had a southern open border, you get what we have right now. And the cleanup on aisle 6 is going to take probably 5 times as long as it did to facilitate itself into the United States of America. The easy part was getting them in. The hard part's getting them out.
Yeah, and also, I think it's difficult for people to understand how bad this can get. I mean, listen, your experience in drug enforcement, you know firsthand. But in Latin America, like, kidnappings are a normal way of life. They just accept it as normal. And we're starting to see this trend in cities across America where people on these e-bikes zipping through traffic. And I get really concerned when I see them covered all in black and their faces covered in black as well, because that's how they execute people in Latin America. And one of the times I was in Colombia in recent years, we were at an intersection in one of the better neighborhoods of the city, and 3 or 4 cars ahead of us. What do we hear? We hear a motorcycle. They were at dirt bikes, drives between the cars, pulls up to the guy at the red light, pulls out a gun, bang, 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 and then drives off. That's how they execute people. And it's almost like they're building the infrastructure here, except here there are Uber Eats delivery boys. But it's really kind of freaky. And I don't have one friend in Latin America, not one. I have a lot of friends in Colombia. Not one of them doesn't have a sibling, aunt, uncle, a cousin who wasn't executed by the drug cartels when they were controlling the country. Now, thank God, there's not really any Colombian drug cartels. They're all Mexican, and they're running Colombia's drug trade as well. And something that was just sent to me by a contact of mine in Mexico was El Chapo's son. I'm sure you all know who El Chapo is if you've been following kind of drug trade, what's been going on. El Chapo's son was very close, or is very close with Nicolas Maduro. And apparently, between the two of them, that's how they brought Hezbollah into the fold of the international drug trade. So through the Sinaloa cartel. All right. So Andrea, go ahead.
Thank you, Ron. 2 comments and then a question. Yeah, some of us, well, actually, I have more than one question, but it's touched us all. I mean, including me. I mean, I don't want you guys to give me sympathy, but my 24-year-old niece died of an overdose with her 6-week-old baby in her lap. So it's devastating, and that was over 4 years ago. It's something that the family will never recover from. I mean, they'll move on and, take change their life to adjust, but it's really sad what they've done to our country. And the second thing I have to ask you, Ron, is there was a huge Attorney General, FBI, I mean, multi-agency bust. Now, this is from a state that I lived in for a while, Alabama, and it also affected Georgia. The Hyundai plant was busted, and I've watched this for years and years and years. This is not the first time. They were busted for criminal activity, working with the unemployment agencies, subcontractors of subcontractors of subcontractors, employing individuals, as young as 12 years old and working 10, 12-hour shifts, third shift, just to pay the cartels. So, based on what I just said, do you think this big bust in Alabama is connected to what we just discussed tonight as far as the drug cartels funding the Hezbollah in Venezuela?
So this week, there were other stories that came out from the Department of Justice, DEA, FBI, including 171 cartel members in New England alone were arrested this week, all tied to the Sinaloa cartel. Also, the Sinaloa cartel was tied into the largest precursor chemical bust on the high seas. They actually intercepted the ship. These were precursors for meth. 420,000 pounds of methamphetamine could have been produced by these precursor chemicals. 420,000 pounds. That's 42 metric tons, I believe. That, along with what you're talking about at the Hyundai plant, we are seeing multiple cartels utilizing multiple facilitation routes. As BJ just said, El Chapo's son and Maduro are good friends. Maduro has signed agreements with Iran and Russia and China for decades-long safety, security, and economic agreements between their countries. So anything you see at the street level in today's day and age is now state-sponsored. It's all state-sponsored to some degree. Even the president of Mexico is probably tied in to the Mexican cartels. The amount of money that the Mexican cartels are able to generate utilizing Europe, Canada, and the United States as customers is unfathomable to most of us. And it helps fund the government. Afghanistan, I think, is 33% funded, roughly, or had been, in their their GDP through heroin. Venezuela, I think, is around 15% through their cocaine sales. Mexico, I have no idea what their GDP is regarding illicit narcotics.
I can weigh in on that for a second.
What is it?
According to somebody I know who's highly credible and well connected in the Mexican government, the official numbers that nobody wants to talk about, so therefore the unofficial numbers, is their GDP. It's 23% of their GDP, apparently.
is attributed to the narco industry, 23%. And Mexico, in terms of Latin America, is an economic powerhouse. When you're in Latin America, they see it almost as like the Spanish America. It's very significant when you're there. But yeah, 23%.
So when you think about that, the amount of money, again, is unfathomable. And it is overseen directly in Maduro's case, directly in the Taliban's case, perhaps indirectly through Mexico and Colombia. But this is all state-sponsored narco-terrorism now. Every single overdose is on the hands of these mafia-style run governments around the world. Every single one of them. This is no longer El Chapo or the Medellin cartels. These are the highest levels of government, world leaders that are now involved in it, all to make money and undermine the U.S. So, Andrea, I don't want to sound conspiratorialist, but it's all connected, either directly or indirectly.
Yeah, and that's just one location. I mean, it's mind-boggling, isn't it, Ron? They arrested around 500 people in the raid in Alabama in the Hyundai plant. It's mind-boggling.
That's crazy. Okay, let's go to District, since he's somewhat in the, shall we say, industry, and then we'll go to everybody else. What's up, District? How are you, brother?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for inviting me to co-host tonight. That was a surprise. But yeah, Ron brought up a very good point. We talked about this in the space last night as well, and that's that this concept of clear and present danger to the United States. So before joining the space tonight, I ran some CDC numbers going back the last 10 years. And these are on all drug deaths in the United States, 2014 to 2024. So you're looking at one decade. So back in 2014, there were a total of 47,000 deaths. By 2023, that increased to more than 105,000 deaths. So you have a doubling or more of deaths in 10 years. Now, for your listeners who might not know me, I'm an analyst. I worked in government for 35 years. I live and I work here in Washington, D.C. And I previously worked the street in public safety. So my time in public safety on the street was roughly the same time probably as Ron's, which was from the late 80s to the mid 1990s. So, I've seen all this firsthand, thousands of cases about the effect of drugs, on people. So when you just look at the number of deaths, that's nothing compared to the number of people who don't die. So, you got to multiply that by 10 or more. And then you got to look at the downstream effect. Here in the United States, drugs are so permeated through the country that it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what sex you are. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter where you live. It can be a big city or a small town. All of them are equally affected by these illicit drugs. And I mean, you're talking mostly fentanyl. Fentanyl is the number one killer of illegal drugs of people now in the United States. The real problem with fentanyl is that the chemical composition of the fentanyl drugs that are being distributed changes sometimes on a monthly basis. So, I look at autopsy data every day. And if you jump back just a couple of years, you would see one chemical composition of fentanyl that was less lethal. And if you started looking at what's now being sold on the street, it is much more lethal. So, what they try to do in chemical composition is they try to increase the effective drug in the same size packet. So what happens is that people actually get higher and then actually become more addicted to the drug because that sells more product. So it's always in their best interest to do that, and of course that just increases the total distribution of drugs. Um, the other thing I would say, and we talked about this a little bit in the space the other night or last Friday night, is how these drugs get into the United States, and Ron talked about this a little bit at length. But even though we've closed down the southern border, and even though now we're starting to take actions to really secure a lot of other stuff, the fact is these drugs continue to pour across the border. So they're coming in from not only land transit through vehicles and other means, quite probably tunnels deep underground, but they're also being shipped. So they're being landed at ports, and of course they're being landed at ports in Canada and other areas. And Ron talked about that big shipment of cash south to north, which involved many semi trucks in the billions of dollars. Okay, look, short story. None of that happens unless there's an entire back end of people paid to look the other way. And that's the big weakness right now. If we have, anywhere from dock workers to truck drivers to border security officials to police officers to everybody else, and I'm not saying all of these individuals, but I'm saying key individuals in different areas, if they're on the take from these narco terrorist organizations, and they probably get paid good money, you can still make certain that these drugs are getting into the United States. And once they're in the United States, they get distributed fairly easy because the United States is an open country. We don't stop vehicles for checking inspections and pull you out of your car or your truck and say, "Are you transporting drugs?" That's not the way it works. But on the other side of the border, that's a different story. The one part that we got to do in enforcement, we got to look a lot deeper in how these drugs are getting through ports and border ports to get into the United States. And then we got to look at the people that are allowing that. And that will unfortunately be something that will be difficult because you're going to see a lot of people involved in that you would not, in my opinion, expect. And so the last thing I'll say is that, you know, and Ron touched upon this, if you define these organizations as narco terrorists, keyword they're terrorists, and you've clearly demonstrated a clear and present danger to the citizens of the United States, why not use the military? And he is exactly right. Okay. You know, the problem with arresting all these knuckleheads and the problem with trying to prosecute all these knuckleheads and doing all that is first you got to build a case against them. First, you got to find them and get them. Then you got to bring them back to the United States. And then you got to go through a multi freaking year process to prosecute them. And if you're lucky, put them in jail. That only takes time and it also takes a lot of money. Why deal with it? If on the front end, you define these people as foreign adversaries, which the Trump administration has done very effectively. And if you have the clear and present danger piece there, which you do, okay, and you can show that conclusively, why not use the military to cut off the source to begin with. And I think that is in my opinion, I think that's the strategy of the Trump administration. And keep in mind, it's only been in place for 6 months, and they're already making these huge moves to change stuff. That didn't happen in the last 4 years of the Biden administration. Quite frankly, it didn't happen in 4 years of the first Trump administration. So, the people that Trump has right now in the government, obviously they've been planning this out for the last 4 years, because you're just not Trump one day walk into the Oval Office and say, "Oh, let's do this." That's not the way it works, right? So there's a lot of planning. There's a lot of other stuff that has already been put into this, and I think you're starting to see the results. And I believe, my opinion, you'll start seeing a lot more results over the next 6 months. So we'll see what happens. But thank you, BJ. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
I just wanted to
Go ahead, Ron.
to comment on the last part that District talked about. One of the reasons, and probably the primary reason for that kinetic attack on that speedboat crossing and let's be clear, this wasn't some offhanded shoot from the hip kind of situation. This was a lot of intelligence that had been gathered, and it was what we call actionable intelligence, meaning that it was happening as we speak. We could identify who that boat belonged to and what was inside that boat via an all-source analyst using SIGINT, HUMINT, other collection to put together what we would call a targeting package on that boat. And it was presented to the President of the United States. And the President of the United States gave the go. And I would say that we don't know how many kilograms of cocaine were on that boat. It was probably in the ocean of cocaine and heroin and meth and fentanyl. A grain of sand on the beach. But why that was done and why it was made so public, it was deterrence. Everybody involved in the narco-terror organizations at sometimes the lowest levels now have to think twice when they start shipping this stuff to the United States of America. And it's Donald Trump, again, as District said, who had the fortitude to do it, make it public, and withstand the criticism that he knew was coming. And I don't want to get down the rabbit hole here, but it's another one of those 80-20 situations in which, from a political standpoint, make the Democrats defend the narco-terrorists.
And they did. All right.
All right.
I think, Deborah,
you were the first one on stage, and then we'll go to Timmy,
and then
Fred, and then Pat, and then Cannabis.
All
All right. So go ahead, Deborah.
BJ, thank you so much. This is a great space. I lost my son to fentanyl poisoning, and I have started a foundation, and I wanted to see if you or Ron or District would contact me in the DMs if we could get together offline for some stuff that I'm working on. I would love to be able to hook up with y'all and talk about some things. But to District's point, what he was saying, we have 1.5 million people currently in America with addiction problems. The problem is these numbers. I think the year my son was killed, there were like 124,000 overdoses. This is the epidemic and the pandemic of the United States right this minute. And we hear so little talk about it. This room is so small. And there are more. You think of those numbers that district spoke of, and just imagine every one of those people have a mother, father, brother, sister, aunt, uncle. So I have an army behind me, and I intend to use it. And if it were up to me, I'd put a bomb in all of them. I'd blow them all out the water. I think what Trump did was great. I think we should, as far as I'm concerned, you can flatten every country that's doing this, and I don't care. I am done. I lost my son. You're talking to a woman who has nothing else to lose. I ain't scared. But what I was going to say, the problem is like District was saying, now they have carfentanil. Even the Narcan cannot bring people back from some of this fentanyl that is on the streets with the chemicals that they are using. And also, what the drug dealers do is they intentionally OD every 6 to 10th client because that ups their sales. That brings more people in, especially people with addiction to fentanyl, because they want that bigger high because they've been on it so long. And so people don't realize some of this is intentional. When I tell people this, they're like, that's not true. That's not true. It is absolutely true. I have talked to drug dealers who admit this. And so, yeah, this is like a huge issue. I think it is great what Trump's doing. The only issue, I voted for this. The only issue I had is I wasn't the one he had there to push the damn button, because I'd have pushed it with love from Deborah. And so, and I'd have written it on the bomb. And if he does any more and anybody's listening, please have him contact me because I'd love to push that button. And anybody who thinks I'm a terrible person can kiss my butt. I don't care. They have no idea what having to bury your child is like. So, yeah, God forgive me if I'm wrong. I'm wrong, but um we have to start facing this, and we have to start talking about addiction, and we have to start having compassion. Also they say it is proven a fact, whether you're codependent or not, it really does not matter. It's not going to change the outcome. So sometimes, as a parent or family member, we have to step in and help them get clean. And we have to come up with legislation, which is what I'm working on, to make this happen, where family, before they go to jail, before they are dead, that we can do something about this addiction and help them before they're dead. We have to talk about this every day. It should be on the television. We have to stop putting such a stigma on addiction. And remember, it's somebody's family. They have to be loved. We have to care enough about them to do something and be better. Thanks for letting me speak. Love the conversation. And please get up with me if you would, District. I'd love to get up with you to get some of your analysis. And Ron, I'd love to get with you and talk also.
My DMs are always open, Deborah. And I would just say what we learned from the drug war of the 1980s and 1990s was that there is no magic bullet. There is no one step. It has to be an integrated process from source countries, from the social programs within the United States, to a simple Nancy Reagan just say no to drugs public announcement. All of these things work in conjunction in order to lower that. And the less use of these illicit drugs in the United States means less money for the cartels and for the terrorists.
Deborah, a couple of years ago, somebody drove from quite far to Toronto to get me to sign a book for her. And so we met at one of my colleagues is a lawyer, so we met at his office. And she was really excited to meet, and we talked and whatever. And then she told me really the same story, that during COVID, not only were we being locked in our houses like prisoners, but her son overdosed on fentanyl as well. And then I watched her break down in tears, and it is gut-wrenching to watch, to be entirely honest. So I actually connected her with, I don't know if you know Scott Adams. He lost his stepson to fentanyl as well. So I sent Scott a DM and said, I'd like to introduce you to somebody. Maybe you guys can talk and kind of, just share some of your sorrow and help each other. And he was gracious enough, gone and spoke to her for a little bit. And maybe we do a little bit of that. Send me a DM, and I know there's a lot of appetite, because I was going back and forth with for a little bit in terms of what strategies there can be to get this issue on the forefront of people's minds. Because one of the problems we have is people know it's happening. It's not that they don't care. It's just not repeated in the news media over and over and over again to make people care, like they're caring about a little country in the Middle East they know nothing about, right? And so maybe there's some messaging strategies we can do and get some people working together.
BJ,
So send me a DM.
Thank you. I will. And what Ron was saying is 100%. It's not one thing. And BJ, you're absolutely correct. That is one thing. There are several things that we hope to do as a foundation, and that is to help parents receive bereft counseling, because some people, their insurances do not cover it, and they don't even think they need it. Another thing we're going to be working on is trying to get protocol put into all 50 states and every police and sheriff's department, that when they go to an overdose, that they have like a bereft counselor or one of our volunteers with them that can bring information, that they can provide our information so they can connect us to help get them help, because at that moment you're in shock. And so we will be doing those things. I am working on legislation in my state right now. I've been drawing it up, working with drug court and a judge and the legislators in my state. And I almost have that bill ready, and we are working on my website right now. But the other thing that we are going to be working on, because something that does not exist, is a community. Most of your treatment facilities are in the middle of Cracktown. They can walk out the door and get drugs. We want to work on building communities across the United States that encompass the medical part, the community part, and we're going to be coming out with a layout of that will have like equine therapy and different things. So we, as a nonprofit, will be working on a lot of this. We will need volunteers, and so I will DM with you. We will get together. And when I get my website finished, I just met with the guy this week for it. I'll get that to you. And when you guys are having these spaces, if you could put it up so we can get volunteers and stuff, we also want to be a resource for every county in every state. That's what we want our website to be, where people can go to either find out about treatment or bereft counseling or legislation, whatever it may be. So I would love to connect. Like I said, just DM me and I will give you my phone number and we can talk. But I really appreciate you giving me time. And thank you for having this space tonight. That's great.
And thank you, Deborah. And I'm very sorry to hear that. Nobody should bury their child. Okay, Timmy, go ahead, brother.
Hey, thanks, BJ. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Andrea. Thank you, guys. This is amazing. Deborah, thank you. Stories like yours keep somebody else sober. I'm sorry for the loss, but your child has saved a lot more lives. I got sober 20 years ago from Oxycontin. I dodged a heroin bullet by probably 6 months because all my friends went on it later on. And I recently learned that 2 million vapes were seized at the Chicago ports containing a drug called kratom, which is a synthetic opiate sold in every single vape shop. So kids think they're inhaling nicotine and they're finding out that they're inhaling from China these vapes with kratom, which is running them up the ramp pole. And weed has gone from 4% back in the days that I thought it should be legalized to now it's 40% and 60%, where it is chemically engineered, as Ron just mentioned. And like connecting the dots, it's so in our face where guys I know are taking whatever the drug thing is to test if their cocaine has fentanyl. Rather than quit, they just keep doing it. I'm vaping still knowing it too myself. I'm guilty of it. And like I think the clear and present danger was really interesting, and I sat in on a Great Stealth podcast space yesterday where she was talking a little bit about Ireland too, and I just thought it was interesting. You bring in Tom Clancy, and I learned about the Palestinian involvement with the IRA, and they had the orphanages and the child trafficking, and just it's Patriot Games and clear and present danger at the same time. Right?
How was it?
It was good. Both
sorry,
movies
I
were
was
good.
open. I'm
It's
sorry.
all right. But I was wondering if maybe correct me on any comments that I made that were a little bit out of turn on that, but also like what can we do about it without putting our heads out there maybe necessarily, because they're all over Chicago. I posted a bunch of videos. That shit, I live in the nicest neighborhood in the city, and that's all over here. And I'm getting sandwiched now with Somalian Islamic terrorists literally 4 blocks west of me. And I'm finding these Pope people fractions. I'm seeing Latin guys sleeping behind flower bushes with fanny packs hidden kind of 5 feet away from them. I can only guess what's in them. Like, what can we do to identify this actual cells near us and avoid it or report it?
We should actually talk privately, because the only place that Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, has been, who's hard left, communist, you name it. It's the whole deal. The only place he's gone in the United States officially was to Chicago to meet with the Islamic groups there. According to some of my contacts in Colombia. So we should talk privately about that. Because I want to ask you, especially when you say there's Latin people there, we should talk. You don't speak Spanish, do you, Timmy?
No, not at all.
Okay. All right.
So then, and there's other things too where we have corporate connections to Mexico here too, from the executive level, and it connects with the NGOs also, where like we're watching it. That's ways for them to launder money through construction, just like the mafia of all the LGBTQ church. Sorry, I'm going down the rabbit hole on that.
Yeah, but that's also more related to human trafficking, which is a completely other file. That's tangentially related. We'll talk about that.
Okay, but I guess, can you, Ron, just speak? Am I out of turn, or do you think it is kind of clear and present and Patriot games at the same time?
Yeah, I can't speak to the Irish part of that. I'm not tracking that. But you asked, what can we do? We hear that all the time. And I think people say that with passion in their hearts, and they really have a want and a desire to help, change the world. But the way to change your world is to change your neighborhood. And if you're seeing the things that you're seeing, you need to get involved at a local level, because that's where it starts. I'll give you two quick law enforcement stories. I had just a citizen call me up while I was working on one of these task forces in a smaller city here. While I was working on one of the task forces, and said they had noticed a lot of car traffic in and out of their neighbor across the street. And it was like 5-minute stops in and out, oftentimes with one or two other people in the car that would stay in the car. And he thought, it's odd, it could be drug related. Well, I got the address, and I asked him if he had the ability to get plate numbers and car types. He said, yeah, I could do that. I said, just get a notebook. Every time a car stops by for 5 minutes, write down the plate number, how many people are in the car, the type of car, etc. Within a month, I had over 50. And we ran the plate numbers, and the vast majority of them came back with some sort of drug history. That allowed me to get a search warrant. And we hit that house, and we came up with 2 pounds of marijuana and a quarter key of cocaine inside the house, which is a big deal for these smaller cities. And that has a chilling effect in your neighborhood for drug dealers. They don't like that. Start a neighborhood watch. Take care of your neighborhood first. Because if you do your neighborhood and it works, one of my best friends, a guy by the name of Officer Preby, you can take a look at this. He was a community police officer at the same time that I was working at the Sheboygan Police Department here in Wisconsin. And he started the NAD program, Neighbors Against Drugs. And they just took these little political signs. They were red with black writing, with a syringe and a circle with a cross through it. Neighbors Against Drugs. And these things started popping up all over the neighborhoods. And the drug dealers see this, and they figure, if you got a sign in your front yard that says that, you're probably watching what I'm doing. It had a massive effect. So much so that he went around the United States and gave presentations on how NAD worked and how to implement it in your local police department. Look, I'm not going to change the world, neither are you. But we can certainly change the small little world that we live in, piece by piece. And that's what you can do as an individual citizen.
I think
there's also something else you can do that we're trying to do here, that Ron, you and I have discussed, which is, I always like to talk about messaging, communication. We can all start popularizing the term narco-terrorism. It has a certain stink to it, and it'll spawn the curiosity gap and allow people to, I guess, get into more of a negative frame, because it's very easy for people, especially in the libertarian camps where I swim, to say, oh, if people want drugs, then they shouldn't take them, and that sort of thing. But when you stick the label of narco-terrorism and explain that this is what's causing so much of the grief in the developing world, then it becomes difficult for people to shake. You can almost feel it. So I think we're entering the era. That's what Trump has just started in this war against narco-terrorism. And if we do our best to inform as many people, so I'm going to write a couple of articles about it as well. I'll try to get one to Zero Hedge. If we can get that
that
ball rolling where people start to see it for what it is, then I think it'll be helpful.
There's a reason why Nicolas Maduro has a $50 million bounty on his head and feels safe as safe can be inside his own country. And that's because billions upon billions of US dollars are flowing into his coffers, and he's able to buy virtually anything he needs, including a standing army, including protection, hardened bunkers, whatever he needs in order to remain in power. He's unelected. He cheated the election. We all know it. And yet he remains in power with a $50 million bounty on his head, primarily because of narco money from the United States and Canada into his coffers.
Ron, I tried to DM you. I can't.
All right, I'll DM you after the space, Deborah.
Thank you.
Okay,
next, Fred. What's up, brother?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Difficult conversation tonight. Certainly enlightening, frustrating. Certainly support everything that Donald Trump is trying to accomplish in the administration. I don't know that you will be able to drone the cartels into oblivion. I don't know that the war on drugs will be successful in as much as it will quell the thirst for drugs in the United States at all. Please understand, I live in New Jersey. By the way, I've been there. I'm not. Heroin was my best friend. May 16th, 1985 is a day I will remember as the last day I ever used narcotics or drugs. That said, so I'm not coming from this from a, Mr. Skeptical who's never been there before. But we live in a society where there are marijuana dispensaries on every corner in New Jersey. I could walk to 2 different ones from my house. There are liquor stores all over. The drugs that are distributed by our doctors to make us feel better, be it mood altering drugs for depression or because you're hyper active in school. This society has been built, unfortunately, in taking something to make things go away. I certainly hope that Donald Trump and future administrations are as successful as possible in killing all of these people and making sure that as little of this comes into the country as possible. I don't know if it'll be successful, but I certainly can hope that it'll be successful. It hasn't been successful. The war on drugs has made great strides. It doesn't mean that the narcotics agents and the people that have tried to defend this nation haven't worked hard and done well. And I know DEA agents that I play cards with that busted their hump every day and made drug busts, and cops that worked undercover in New York City and all to help America and serve Americans. And I applaud all of it. Until there's a change in this society, until we stop legalizing things like marijuana, until we stop promoting the type of legal drug use that we have, everybody forgets that fentanyl is a wonderful drug. It's just not a wonderful drug if it's sold by narco-terrorists. Fentanyl is something you take after surgery. When you're in severe pain, it cuts that severe pain. Fentanyl is something that can be given to you if you have, chronic pain and administered to you by a doctor and used efficaciously if you're a soldier or someone that has come down. But drug abuse is what it is. And since opium has come to this country and alcohol has been in this country, and then it became morphine, and then it became heroin, and now it's became fentanyl, and it was everything there in between. So until the society decides to change, and until there is a concerted effort to eliminate this crutch that we all have, and many other cultures have it as well, we will change Maduro's name to some other guy. We will change the name of some other person. Now, conversely, if the most important thing that a government does is protect its citizens, to keep its citizens safe. So even though it may not be efficacious, this war on drugs, and there may be different names, doing nothing is never the answer, because you have to do whatever you possibly can to show your citizenship that you are here to serve them and to keep them safe. It's a complicated issue. It's not going away in one day, like Ron says, but ideally, the customer has to go away and the names will die off. Thank you so much for letting me speak. Have a good evening.
Fred, thanks a lot. You and I have a lot of discussions offline, and I truly appreciate what the story you just told. What I would say to you is, I agree with you in part. Here's where I disagree. You're right in this part, is that you're never going to get rid of it 100%. That's not going to happen. But you strive to do that. Vince Lombardi, famous football coach for the Green Bay Packers, had a famous quote saying, "We strive for perfection every single day, knowing we'll never achieve it. But in that process, we will achieve greatness." Now, I say that because we try to do that with other aspects of substances. Think of tobacco and cigarette smoking and how much that has dropped off because it was seen around the country as being, uninhabitable in buildings, and it got banned in restaurants and bars. Did it eliminate it? Of course not. But there was a stigma if you were a smoker. And I think that reduced smoking quite a bit. And I think the same could be said for OWI, from what drinking and driving was in the 50s and 60s to what drinking and driving is today. There's a stigma behind drinking and driving now. The police cracked down on it. And it helped reduce it. Did it eliminate it? Of course not. Did the smoking bans eliminate smoking? Of course not.
Just
But
to
it
interrupt you
reduced
real
it.
quick, has alcoholism dropped at all since DUIs have gone down?
That I don't know. I don't have the numbers. Do you know? I can't tell.
I would think not. I would think that alcoholism's at its all-time high in the United States.
That could be because of COVID, though, right, Fred?
It's
actually self-medication.
It's actually at an
COVID.
all-time low. It's actually an all-time low. And so much so that the restaurant industry is suffering from it, because more and more people are just quitting drinking. Just for many different reasons. But yeah, it's at an all-time low.
That's great news.
So, yeah, it is. And so what I would say, Fred, is what I had said earlier, in response to something District had said. And there is no magic bullet. You have to do, like you had said, you have to do an across the board, almost theology, in that you have to make drug selling in the United States and drug usage a stigma. You have to look at drug dealers in a different way, number one. Number two, you have to attack the source countries. I don't necessarily mean kinetically, although we've gone down that road for the first time in history, but maybe it does take kinetic attacks. All of these things work in conjunction. Neighbors against drugs. People eye-opening to drug use and abuse in their neighborhood and doing something about it, contacting their local narcotics task forces and providing information. All of these things must be encouraged and celebrated if you want to make a dent.
Well, when the state representatives are opening up dispensaries all over the United States and
Yeah, that's a problem.
selling, it's problematic. It's sending the wrong message. When doctors are prescribing and are told to prescribe mood-altering drugs and depressants and relaxants and all, and things to calm you and sleeping pills, this, that, or the other thing, and it's acceptable in medicine, it's not helping. And the difficulty is when you are a drug addict, being labeled with that stigma after you have become straight, especially in the early stages of your recovery, makes it really difficult fine line for society to say that were a drug addict a year after you're in recovery and people look at you because you are one of those people that fell victim to drug use and you can't get a job because of it, because the stigma, like a DUI, when they look at your employment record and they look at your rehab record and say, well, you were in recovery. We don't really hire people that were drug addicts before. Then all of a sudden it's a fine line. So I get it. You want to stigmatize it. You want, like you did to alcohol and DUIs. You want to do that like you did smoking. I get it. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. My kids would never smoke a cigarette ever. That said, you also have people that go into treatment, and when they come out of treatment, it's a fine line.
Fred,
Yes,
right.
what I would say for just real quick, Deborah. What I would say, Fred, to that, I agree with you, and that's part of the sociological plan. Would be to stigmatize the usage and celebrate the rehabilitation. Celebrate it. Somebody saved their own life by finding they hit rock bottom, they had nowhere to go, and they went and sought help. And with the understanding that many of these people need that help their entire lives, but they saved their life, celebrate it, and tell them to go on to greatness. Now do something with it. So I think you can do both. I think you can stigmatize the usage and celebrate the rehabilitation.
Yeah, that's what I was saying too, Ron. I mean, we have to get rid of the stigma of they're an addict because addiction is a sickness, but it's the behavior or the drug that you want to stigmatize. But I have to set something straight because Fred made the comment about fentanyl. Doctors give it to you, you have it after surgery, all that. Look, the fentanyl that is being put in the drugs that are killing 2-year-olds and um from what 18 to 45 causing most of the deaths is not your same fentanyl that is being used in your hospitals by your doctors, Fred. I had to set that
Of course
straight.
not. Of course not.
Yeah, well you had
Heroin was morphine was a drug used in
right,
hospitals. Heroin was a drug used
right,
in hospital. Methadone was a drug to cure heroin addiction.
right.
They just keep going up the ladder. It started with the Chinese bringing opium into
Right.
this
Well,
country.
what's happening is they're going to Mexico and they're mixing these chemicals. And I'm sure District can speak to this more than I can. He spoke to it earlier. But I just wanted to set that straight. Yes, they used them in hospitals, and I understand what you're saying, but I just wanted to clarify that that is not the same fentanyl that is on the streets.
Fred, I would love to connect. Congrats, we're both friends of Bill. It sounds like. I'd love to connect separately too, because I've noticed and followed private equity investing in the treatment centers. Pritzker's very heavily invested in the treatment centers, and the kids that are coming out now, the newly sober, seem to be on 4 different mood altering medications that just all seem to counter-react each other. And it just seems like it's cyclical, but I also know some questionable ownerships of these treatment halfway centers, and they might as well be cartel.
All
All right, let's get on to Pat. Thank you for being so patient, Pat.
How are you?
Oh, hi. I was multitasking and you caught me by surprise there, but hello.
Well, Cedric, I always catch District when he's eating.
And I know
me too. Me too.
Tonight.
Me too, actually. Like literally, he's always caught by surprise when I call on him. But great space. Deborah, I want to say I'm so sorry to hear about your son. I can't even imagine. I'm a mom too, and that's just absolutely awful. But thank you for sharing that. I wanted to a couple of things. So first of all, for those of you who don't know, I run along with District. Who else is here? Leah down there. Rock the House is here too. We run a page that supports Israel. It's called the Science of Israel. So we're constantly looking at news and all that. And I just saw something that Leah had posted on our chat about the U.S. is sending a squadron of 12 stealth fighter jets to the Caribbean for operations targeting drug cartels. That's from Fox News. That came up like a couple hours ago, so pretty fresh news. So it's they're ramping up the operations. So I wanted to go a little bit more into like kind of like the operations of this fight against terror, like
Narco-terrorism,
narco-terrorism, yeah. And the operation that happened, and the strike that that the U.S. did the other day, and also I wanted to ask Ron, like, how do you think? Obviously, this is, I imagine the guys that are running these cartels and everything are scrambling, right? Like they're like, holy shit, okay, so he means that he's actually coming after us. I wanted to ask you, first of all, how do you think that's going to affect, like, how are they going to respond and all that? Is it going to be obviously a deterrent to to their operations, and they have to adjust, right? It's not going to be business as usual. Um, and the other thing that kind of caught my attention, and I think I mentioned it in our space yesterday, was that the operation, it almost looks a little bit like like the IDF operations against the terrorists. The hitting of that vessel with however many number of like narcos were in there. I don't know if the U.S. is kind of taking notes from Israel in this. I know they're very close and they work closely together, obviously, with the fight over there and all that. Like the whole thing kind of like looked like that. And to me, like thinking about these guys, like trying to figure out what the hell, like, are we gonna get like a bomb dropped on us any minute? It's almost like the beeper operation, right? Like I know that, like for example, in our space, Sniper has shared that they're all like terrified. Like literally, can we actually use the microwave? Can we pick up the phone? Can we turn the TV on? Like, is it gonna explode? And is it a bomb? Whatever. So I imagine it's like a similar thing that's going on right now with these narcos, which is great. I mean, like get them like scrambling and all that. And the other thing, along the lines of Israel too, do you think that, because obviously there's the connection, right? Hezbollah, there's the connection to the narcos. Do you think that Israel is collaborating with what Trump is trying to do and sharing intelligence? I imagine that they are working closely together in this because like it's over here, but it's related to what's happening in the Middle East as well. So I guess those were my two questions. How do you think, like this is going to affect the operations, and then like the collaboration between the U.S. and Israel part? Thank you.
I'll answer your second part first. I don't know how deeply embedded the Mossad and other agencies within Israel are to the narco-terror aspect of this. They may be, I just don't know. What I do know is that the Drug Enforcement Administration has, I think it's changing, unfortunately, but as we speak, they have 67 country offices outside the United States. And they have the most robust human intelligence collection of all the agencies within the US intelligence world. They have more confidential informants and human sources than even the CIA does. That's how these things begin generally. You have a lot of DEA on the ground, undercover, surreptitiously, quietly working their sources within these source countries. And those types of investigations tend to start with HUMIT, with somebody saying something to the DEA. Then you can start working up all of your technology to work that case. Now, when you asked about changing, we call it TTPs, techniques and protocols, tactics, techniques, and protocols. That happens everywhere in this world, from street level enforcement all the way up to the narco-terror kingpins. If we find a way to interdict and intercede, whether it's the money, the drugs, the movement of even the cartel security apparatus, if we find a way to interdict it, they will change. Just as we used to use what we call garbage searches, very simple thing. Just go out and pull somebody's garbage off the front and look for evidence of drug dealing from within the garbage. And then we would do that for a month, and we would get 8 or 10 search warrants off of it. And then the garbage would be clean for the next 6 months, because they would change, they would clean up their garbage, and then again, a year later, they get sloppy again. That's at the street level. And we'd have to change our techniques, just as they change their techniques. How are they going to change? I don't know. I can't speak to that, because sometimes it's just spitballing ideas around the table and somebody comes up with something. So sometimes it's unpredictable. Sometimes you can predict it, but often you can't. You have to be flexible and fluid in the way that you utilize your assets, both to gather intelligence and then to action that intelligence. You have to be ready to think outside the box and be prepared, because they're flexible and fluid, and you have to be as well.
Cannabis, what's up, brother?
Hey, how are you? Great space. I think we need, I have a military question, but one, I think we need to stay laser focused on what we're trying to accomplish. And, I'm very disappointed with a lot of other fellow Americans. I always like reading the comments on X, right? And so as you read the comments about, what we're doing down in the Caribbean, half the Americans are like, look, it's none of our business, stay out. Mind your own business, U.S. government. You have no right to kill, right? You've seen all that crap. So, it's all, I don't know why some things are always so politicized, right? Like, we have people dying. The Chinese just sent a bunch of precursors here, right? But yet, half of our country is just so apathetic, it's disgusting. And that's something I think we just, need to educate as well, that look, people's, your neighbors are dying from the shit, our relatives, etc. But I don't like seeing that when we're trying to, finally start doing something again. But
Can I, before you ask your
yeah.
question, Cannabis, can I just interject on that?
Yeah.
I would just be really careful falling prey to using Twitter as evidence as half the country. Remember, Twitter has morphed itself into a highly political space, number one. So the people that are coming to Twitter and responding are political in mind. And it's probably split half and half between, you know, conservative and liberal mindset,
Yep.
which is not the real world. Okay, Twitter's not the real world. So I just be careful going down that particular rabbit hole, because I would tell you, based upon my experience, this is at least an 80-20 issue. It's not a 50-50 issue.
Yeah, no, I would hope it is, right? Just because we're finally doing something. Two, I remember when Trump was running, he said he was going to try and put in, make it a federal death penalty, over a certain amount of certain types of drugs, and hopefully that gets put in place as well, right? For the people, once the drugs make it here, that's all laced with that shit. That if you're caught selling meaningful amounts, that you're getting the death penalty. But the military question was like last night, right? There was the flyover of our Navy ships, okay? And I just read there was a second flyover too, and we didn't do anything about that either. And they were both reported by CBS. The second one was reported about 2 hours ago. But why aren't we taking out those, because those are being flown, I'm assuming, by drug cartels because they work for Maduro, right? And we labeled his government as a drug cartel. Why is it that we blew up the boat? And I'm glad we did. But why aren't we shooting the shit down? Because it's starting to be just on these two instances reminiscent of the stuff that was going on in the Middle East where Biden wasn't doing anything. Is there some rule or law? And then again, on Twitter, half the people are like, well, they're not allowed to. It's common to fly over enemy ships, but it's not. So I was just looking for an answer on that.
So this is more of a political issue than it is a military or even narco-terror issue, in my opinion. Because when we kinetically attacked that ship, we had the intelligence to prove that it was an imminent danger to the United States of America because it was carrying death in the form of powder. And we had the intelligence that we needed to actively engage with that target and take that target out. The jets flying over is for Maduro's public consumption, to show that he's a tough guy. He's not going to be, intimidated by the United States of America. It's to prop himself up. If the United States were to engage in that would be an incredible escalation into a full-out conflict, which we do not want to get involved in right now. We want to fight this as a drug war, not as a kinetic army on army war. Therefore, we'll let them fly over. We'll give them warnings. If they engage in any way, yes, that's a whole different ballgame. But they won't. Again, it's a public consumption for the Venezuelans and those in South America that are Maduro supporters, for him to increase or at least help consolidate his power while he's there. Much in the same way Saudi Arabia publicly and oftentimes very vehemently seems to, back the Palestinians when in quiet back channel rooms, they're not big fans of the Palestinians. They have to put out certain things for public consumption. So that would be my answer to you.
Well, the thing that made it even more confusing today was at the end of the press conference, some of the reporters, I don't know if you saw it, they brought this up. And then Trump looked at Hegseth and said, I don't want them flying over our ships. You tell the captain of those ships next time I want them all shot down. So I don't know if you caught that, but he said that today.
I did not see that, and I'm sure he was talked down off the ledge after that.
Probably. Hey, appreciate it, Ron. Thanks, everybody.
District, go ahead. Sounds like you can weigh in on this, brother.
Yeah. So to answer cannabis question a little bit more simply than the way Ron put it. Okay, so for the drug boat, who owns and operates the drug boat? And who on the drug boat is going to call up CNN and say, hey, I want to be interviewed because our drug boat that was smuggling illegal drugs in the United States, got blown up by a Predator drone operated by the United States Air Force. Oops. That's wrong. That's a military strike against us, right? Who's going to say that to CNN? So the drug boat don't have no standing. On the other hand, the F-16A models that intercepted the United States naval vessels are operated by the Venezuelan Air Force, i.e., the government. So if you take action against those aircraft, you're taking action against the government, which, quite frankly, is literally an act of war. So there's a big difference between those two ends, cannabis. I don't think it's coincidental that the F-35s were moved to Puerto Rico, which, if they have an air force base on Puerto Rico they can fly out of, that island just became an aircraft carrier. So now you got aerial support. If the United States was smart going down Trump's end there, and we got the intelligence, we got the visual and ELANT data to show anytime the Venezuelan Air Force puts up a sortie to go out and intercept our ships. What they would do is they would scramble the F-35s, and those F-16s would never see them coming, and then just maneuver back in behind the F-16s as they're getting ready to buzz our ship and lock them with radar. That'll send off every possible warning signal on those old F-16s. And let's face it, those Venezuelan pilots probably don't have a lot of training and a lot of experience in combat operations. And they're going up against an F-35 that they probably can't even see on their radar. That would scare them off. That's probably the best solution. Shooting them down, yeah. I saw what Trump said about that. Sometimes Trump says stuff just to blow stuff up. So, the reason why Trump is saying that is because he wants reaction to it, not because he's serious about it. So, yeah, there's that. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Trump has
Yeah,
said
dog, I would
publicly.
say
Trump has said publicly he uses hyperbole as a communication tool. Sorry, Ron, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say the Department of Defense put that out publicly, that with the movement of the F-35, so it was no secret. It was put out for a reason, just as District just said. It's a move on the chessboard. After they fly over, okay, well, you flew over with your 25-year-old F-16s. We're going to move our F-35s into place now. So that's what was done.
Yeah, and just remember, I don't mean to correct you, but it's no longer the Department of Defense. It's the Department of War. And Hegseth is now the Secretary of War. Anyhow, I love that. Thanks.
Brandon,
Go ahead, brother. What's up?
Well, I would just say, I think that's a great idea about the F-35s going into to scare away, Maverick style, the Venezuelan fucktards and the F-16s they bought in the 80s. They haven't been able to get parts for Jesus since Chavez got elected in the 98 election cycle. So yeah, that's kind of funny, but that would really pretty much only work if we had a fully operational Operation Coronet Nighthawk again, right? Like when we had 24/7 5-minute fucking alert strike fighters on alert in Panama at the airbase that we don't actually have anymore because Carter signed it away, or mainly in Curacao and Aruba, because the time on target for the F-16 from the airbase in Venezuela to where a DDG is going to be sitting out in the Caribbean is a hell of a lot shorter, even in those old ass F-16s, than those F-35s flying out of Puerto Rico. So I get it. I get it. No, you guys want to keep it kind of like into the like keep it like as counter narcotics interdiction for the FTO designation rather than the kinetic operations. But I'm just going to tell y'all, I've been waiting 30 years to see these people get fucking headshot. I have. Like, like, this is, you did an amazing job breaking it down all of this. Like I was in here earlier when we went through the official presentation and the slides, and it's so good to educate people on what's happened in Venezuela, from like kind of like 04, 06, 2004, 2006 till today. And that's, for most people, that's the most pressing and pertinent, with IRGC and Russia helping them there, and the Chinese getting involved, and but there's still the Cuban intelligence influence. There's still the whole. I mean, this counter narcotics stuff really dates further back, right? Because it links into the Marxist, literally the Marxist communist terrorists became narco traffickers so that they could make money to keep fueling their revolution, right? Which is really just a way for them to maintain power and make money. And so that's ELN and FARC. And Chavez met those dudes in the 70s. Like his brother introduced him to to Colombian officers who were of the same age group, right? And they introduced Chavez to ELN and FARC, and he used ELN and FARC assets while he was a serving officer in the Venezuelan paratroopers, right, in the 80s, to conduct unconventional warfare against the Venezuelan people, Venezuela, Colombia, and the United States government and the people of the United States, culminating in his 1992 coup. After the coup, he sought refuge when he got his little, he got pardoned, right? They gave amnesty to try and keep things nice and chill in Venezuela. He goes to Colombia, and he's sitting down with FARC and ELN and plotting how he's going to take the fucking country over. And I got caught up in that in 1996 when I was an exchange student. I was living with a cousin of Enrique Salas Romer, who is the candidate that lost the election to Hugo Chavez in 98 to 99. And I was harassed for like 3 months by the Dirección General de Inteligencia Militar, the dean. Now they call him the DGCM. And that culminated in them not liking the answers I gave them and me keep telling them to fuck off or I'm going to call the embassy. And they finally said, it doesn't matter. This is our country. Give me your fucking passport and get in the fucking car. And they disappeared me. And I got tortured for a little while until the security attache, Ira Shinsky at the U.S. Embassy Caracas, Venezuela, was able to secure my evacuation from the country in 96. So this has been a problem for a lot longer. And a lot of Americans have been adversely impacted before the, I don't want to say just the drugs, because we're losing hundreds of thousands of people a year to the drugs coming, right? But like that's China, so that's why we should also probably blow the Three Gorges Dam. But we are so close to the precipice of global large scale combat operations because there's no way to solve any of these problems simply anymore. You can't do it small ball. Like it's gonna take some really shitty stuff to get back to where we used to be. The Panama Canal was America's moat. We lost the moat. Now we got fucking New World screwworm and all this other random shit coming up from fucking dirt world and ruining our cattle industry, or is on the precipice of ruining our cattle industry. We got fucking 15-year-olds recruit, 20 and 30-year-olds recruiting 15-year-old girls in high schools in Houston to go do random acts of violence on behalf of their TDA fucking gang to make money. I mean, that just happened at Stafford High School and at Memorial High School here in Houston. I mean, there's no, unfortunately, I wish there was an easy answer to all of this, but there isn't, short of a lot of warheads on a lot of foreheads. There was a reason. I think personally, I was going to say, and I'll end on this. There was a reason why the United States had maintained naval supremacy power after Theodore Roosevelt's presidency, right? With Major General Leonard Wood, and his absolute bodying of jihadi Muslim terrorists in the Philippines, very effective, because they were all guys that had gone against Mexico. They fought the American Indian Wars. Wood was on he was on the mission to get Geronimo and got awarded the Medal of Honor, the Congressional Medal of Honor for his role in that campaign. Blackjack Pershing, those guys. Um, there's a reason why we had naval supremacy, and the Navy and Marine Corps were having to just, it's not a nice way of putting it, but stack bodies in South and Central America all the way up to World War II. And after the war, we got nicer about it. We started using, the Central Intelligence Agency with Special Operations Forces training, our partner nations. And so the partner nations got to do the stuff like, execute Ernesto Che Guevara after his little band of idiots were discarded by Fidel into the hills of Bolivia, mountains of Bolivia, and hunted down like the dogs they were. And the last one alive was Ernesto Che Guevara. The president of Bolivia said, "Fucking kill him." And so an NCO got picked, or had to volunteer, and he went and shot him. We didn't do it. We get blamed, right? Because that's why everybody likes to blame Uncle Sugar. America's bad. America's the evil colonizing empire. Well, what we see today is the result of America not having a heavy hand where it needs to be heavy. Thank you.
I would just respond to you, Brandon, that I agree with everything you said. The tricky part is, we talked about this last week, is eating the elephant. And it has to be done one bite at a time. And BJ and I see Z is up on stage. We have a friend of ours who is a really knowledgeable expert on South America, who has spoken eloquently on this, that while there doesn't seem to be an official proclamation, it appears as though we are moving towards a Monroe Doctrine type of foreign policy, in which we need to make sure that the Americas, our continent, is as safe and secure as it can be before we start reaching out. That doesn't mean we can't, shouldn't, or haven't helped to try to clean up things in the Middle East, in the Ukraine, Taiwan, and all these other issues that have slowly built thanks to other administrations before this one. But there definitely appears to be, in my opinion and his, a movement towards the Monroe Doctrine, try to eliminate communism and dictatorship within Latin America, which is, again, a potential clear and present danger to our culture and our way of life. Because if we can't control our continent, then what the hell are we doing? That's where it needs to start, in my opinion. And I think that's the movement that we're making.
And I also think it's important, Brandon will understand this. I know many people in the United States don't often travel to Latin America because of the language barrier. But I got to tell you, from spending so much of my life there, it's a heck of a lot closer than you realize. It's really close. Sorry, Andrea. Go ahead. And then I wanted just to head over to Zigos and see if he has any other final thoughts on Hezbollah, Venezuela, what's going on right now, maybe potential information that he knows. But go ahead, Andrea.
Thanks, BJ. Ron, make this short because I really want to hear from Zigos. In your opinion, in a short statement, what was the impetus of the Biden administration not addressing this for the last 4 years? And why did they let our country flood with so many, many, many millions of these narco-terrorist illegals?
One word: ideology. That's what it comes down to. It's ideology. It was the belief from far left-wing progressives that the United States is too white, the United States is too Christian, we need to intersperse people from around the world, and borders don't matter. That was the impetus behind the southern border opening. That had the second and third order effects of massive infiltration from terrorists, from street gang members, from narco-terrorists, and human traffickers. So the second and third order effects were part of the ideology that they just didn't care about.
It also
That would
comes.
be a discussion for another day, so we'll move on.
That,
Sorry, PJ.
that's a long discussion because it also comes down to the philosophy, and that's where postmodern philosophy comes in, where the criminal is the victim. If you understand their philosophy, the reason they believe that, as crazy it is as it is, it makes sense in their worldview, but it's completely ridiculous. Anyway, Zigos, we talked a lot about Latin America. We touched on Hezbollah. I don't know if you saw Ron's presentation, but do you have any thoughts, anything to add? And by the way, Zigos, I want to introduce you to District Dog. You three would get along very well, given all of your collective knowledge.
Hezbollah, I think it's a humanitarian organization, is it not?
Yeah, they build hospitals, right?
Cockroaches.
Yeah. So
with all their NGOs, yeah, you're right, Zikos. I forgot about all their NGOs.
Yeah, I posted today about as well. Like, while you're focused on Latin America, I understand Paraguay, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, all these operations for Hezbollah has been there for years and years and years. They have all that roots is very porous. They do the drugs and the casino money, and that's how they launder it. There is another very serious threat in Canada. I posted today. I don't want to go into details. It's a report from the government of Canada. It's not a report that came from a third source or a second source. Okay, I posted about it this morning, and it's just scary. It's $130 billion yearly that goes through here as well in Canada. So where we're all focused, and we understand that they have multiple operations in South America. They're active all over the place, and I touched on in the past how they get the money back to Lebanon. If you don't want me to go through it in details, but through all the car dealerships and all that stuff, that's how money stuffed in cars, and they just ship them through porous ports, multiple places. I can't go through it. I think in the past I mentioned a few ports, but yeah. So what do you want me to say? Hezbollah, Hamas. I was listening to Tucker today, and then he's saying Hamas and Hezbollah are not even terrorist organizations, just political organizations. There's nothing I can say anymore about this. It's completely whacked. The world is asleep, and they're operating. I just got home last night from like a long trip, maybe 5-6 days trip. It was pretty interesting. I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer here, but it is scary. I mean, it's in the open. The plan is in the open. They tell us what they want to do. We just don't listen. That's it. We're sleeping. We are playing defense. We just react, right? We just don't. We're not proactive in this thing. I don't see anybody on the streets talking about it, because if you walk on the streets and there's 300 people coming against you, and they all have, long beard, no mustache, you kind of get my drift. What's going on? Ron knows.
And the longer it goes, the worse off it's going to be to clean it up. And it may get to the center of gravity tipping point where
it's a clock. Go on my feed, Ron. Go on my feed. See that clock? It's so accurate. BJ, I sent you some things that I saw a couple of days ago. I'm gonna send you a couple of pictures.
I hope there's some funny memes in there as well. Come on. Lumi, what's up?
Hey, everybody. How's everyone tonight? Good? Yeah. Well, anyway, I just wanted to mention to Brandon that we went ahead and we signed an agreement with Panama to use their military bases a little before all this started moving big time in the Caribbean. Also, I think that we should really look at the import-export businesses when it comes to moving these drugs. Just my opinion. No?
Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if Donald Trump determines to move a full aircraft carrier group into the area.
Panama
Brandon,
they're already,
Brandon,
they're already ready already.
yeah, but that Brandon talked about the timing of Venezuelan jets into the Caribbean or the Gulf of America.
Mm-hmm.
You station a aircraft carrier with F-35s on it, suddenly that changes the ballgame.
Well, you got Puerto Rico there, like Brandon mentioned as well. That's just one giant aircraft carrier. But he did bring up the fact that we had so many bases. My father was stationed. We did 2 tours of duty in Panama. And he was at Albert Air Force Base with IAFA, Inter-American Air Forces Academy. And, I'm pretty familiar with the area. So I just think that, whatever we gave up is pretty much going to be used as far as, in case of things get, that they get heavier. But like I said, as far as the drugs moving into the United States, we really need to look at the import-export businesses that are on the border. It's just, and then with these truck drivers that are, moving, they don't even speak English, and they've got their own little cliques and their own little businesses and their own way of moving shit that is detrimental to the security of the United States.
BJ, I was watching some truck drivers on the 401.
Yeah.
They have their feet on the dash. How they do this?
Cruise control, brother.
What happens if someone stops in front of them or there's some accident or something?
Listen, man, the guy's trafficked into the country. He's going to be underwater in debt for the rest of his life. He was a fighter in the Punjab who's been trafficked here. He's smuggling drugs. He knows he's going to get caught. That's a little bit of pressure. So, you want to put your feet up and relax a little bit once in a while. What better time than when you're driving, right? I mean, the good thing about those truckers in Mississauga and Brampton is they all run independent businesses and they all screw each other. So they all end up fighting with each other anyways. So, maybe nature will run its course. But, and you know what else is funny is egos. When Trump brought out the executive order that all CDL holders, CDL is a commercial driver's license, all CDL holders driving in the United States have to be proficient in English. It started, I think, in Alabama or Arkansas, I can't remember, and then he federalized it. But, buddy, the next day or 2 days later, I got in the truck at a day off, so I went in the truck and did a run to the U.S. The border was a ghost town, man. Usually it's backed up across the bridge. All of Brampton and Mississauga are hauling loads across. All of a sudden, I'm the only truck at the border. They all stopped going in the U.S. and put in requests to only drive in Canada from that day forward. It's great.
So listen, I'm coming back from the United States yesterday morning, and I showed the receipts. I had bought some cigars. I paid $222 for the cigars, and the Canadian government zapped me $700 tariffs. I told them to leave them, smoke them yourself. I left them there.
Well, you know what the problem was? You weren't bringing in precursors or cocaine or heavy drugs. If you had that, like lined in your trunk, you would have been fine. That you don't have to declare.
Buy a used car for $400 and smuggle them in that way. Z, you know this.
Are you guys going to trade war stories now before we shut down? What's the funniest or most ridiculous thing you saw in drug enforcement, Ron? You have some really good stories that you've told me over the phone. What are some of them?
Oh boy,
putting you on the spot. I know that.
Yep. Let Z go if he's got one, and then I'll try to come up with one.
No, you go, because I have to think about them. There's so many stupid stuff, and I told you in private. about what happened to me 2 days ago, right? That was pretty funny, but
Yeah, I don't know how funny I would take that.
Okay,
Okay,
Z,
Z, don't keep us hanging. What happened to you 2 days ago? You brought it up. You got to tell us now, man.
Well, I'm gonna keep it a little bit. So I am walking near how can I put that? Near a place where they congregate a lot of people that they are not, but they look all, kind of.
Ghetto trash? Is ghetto trash the word you want to use?
No, you know what? I was taking pictures, and like a tourist. I was a tourist taking lots of pictures, walking around in some place, and this guy approaches me and he pulls something out, and he goes, well, "What are you doing here?" Not this specific language, right? And immediately I go with "La ilaha illallah, brother. What's going on, man?" And I fake the accent as well to go with his accent. I didn't use my Lebanese accent. And then all of a sudden, everything was okay. No problem. Oh, yeah, brother. Sorry, man. I mistook you for somebody else. That's all that happened. And, I kind of handled it pretty well. It was not funny at the time because I was alone. So basically, I was exposed. So that's it. That was like, I think it was Wednesday or something.
That's like a regular daily occurrence in Latin America, by the way. But I'm glad you're right. Ron?
Well, the one that came to mind, because it was something that when Z spoke to me offline regarding his trials and tribulations a couple of days ago, it was while I was working undercover for a task force, and our source city was Milwaukee, and I was buying 2 pounds of marijuana in an undercover role with an informant and the target from Sheboygan. So we drove all the way down to Milwaukee. I had surveillance that followed me. And this was before Tren de Aragua. We had what we knew as the Latin Kings, a Chicago-based gang that also ran Milwaukee. And they were fairly sophisticated for their day. And we got to the target location, which was on the south side, which is highly Hispanic in Milwaukee. And everybody spoke Spanish, which I did not speak. And we pulled up, and it was across the street from a bar. And apparently the source was inside the bar.
¿Cuánto cuesta?
And can I finish the story first? And then
Of course.
Escalade. And I became pretty nervous immediately because of the setup, the way it was. And it is, having worked undercover for years, the old hair on the back of your neck goes up, and something just was off. And they, of course, use kids on bicycles riding up and down the streets looking for non-Hispanic people sitting in cars to pick out surveillance. And the 2 guys that I had surveilling me were, of course, white guys in, civilian clothing, but definitely would have stuck out. And one of the guys from the bar walks out across to our car in a parking lot across the street. And he starts talking in kind of a higher pitched voice and very excitable. And while I don't speak Spanish, I know what El Policía means. And then I really got nervous. And the guy walks back into the bar, and then another guy comes out and looks straight across the car at us directly in the car, gets into his car and takes off like a bat out of hell, squealing his tires. And when he looked at us, he had a very angry look on his face. Now, I had a wire, and I said inside the wire, as I'm talking to the other 2 people in the car, like, this doesn't look good. I'm not sure that this is going to go good. Then the guy comes back, and a couple minutes later, another person comes out of the bar, comes to the car, says something in Spanish. And the informant that's with me says, they're ready to go. We got to go into the alley behind the bar. That is danger zone 101. If they think I'm police, they've already said El Policia. I got a dirty look from one of the individuals before taking off. Going into the back alley was not the best idea. But I wanted to make the deal. I'm 20 some years old, undercover, full of piss and vinegar. So let's go. The second I turned into the alleyway, my wire went dead. And I had already spoken of my nervousness and what we would call hinkiness to my surveillance teams. And my wire went dead. And it went down so fast. It was like 10 seconds. The money exchanged hands. The grocery bag with 2 pounds of marijuana got dropped in the back seat, and we were gone. It happened so fast that when I pulled out of the alley, my surveillance didn't see me. And they lost me. And I had another hour and a half drive back to Sheboygan. Nonetheless, it all went relatively smoothly besides that. But I got there, and my lieutenant, you could see, had been chain smoking, standing outside the building, nervous as shit. Of course, I had no idea that my wire went dead and that my surveillance didn't pick me up and that the entire eastern half of Wisconsin law enforcement, from Milwaukee PD all the way to the State Patrol, had been looking for me for almost 2 hours. That's the kind of stress and pressure that can go into undercover work. I didn't have a lot of stress and pressure, but my lieutenant sure did, because if I had been kidnapped, shot in the back alley, he would have had a lot of explaining to do about the safety of the operation, etc. So those are the types of things that undercover and counter narcotics officers at a local level even go through.
Because sometimes your team is far away and they can't cover you, so you'll have to kind of rely on your wits.
If only I had some.
On that
note,
I know
District wants me to go for 4 or 5 hours. He gave me shit yesterday. But that's not happening. It's almost 11 o'clock already. I got meetings early in the morning. Want to wrap some things up, and if anybody's got a last word they want to weigh in on before we shut down.
Just wanted to thank everybody for coming, listening, asking questions, and being engaged. I would just reiterate that Timmy asked, what can we do? Get involved in your community. Start a neighborhood watch. Report suspicious activity. Law enforcement can't just guess at what's happening in your neighborhood. You are the eyes of your neighborhood. If you want to help clean up Venezuela, start with your neighborhood.
On this point, Ron, you're so right, because lately social media and regular, civilians are giving the law enforcement lots of leads or where crimes have been happening, who's doing it, license plate numbers, descriptions. All that happens so quickly. In the past, it was impossible because you have to call it tip line and start talking about it, and then maybe they will take your report seriously or not. But right now, it's evidence is all like visual evidence, and like just lately, here in Canada, there's a bunch of people, idiots, they were shooting just on the lake, just shooting fish. I don't know what they're doing. All illegal stuff. But social media discovered their posts from Instagram and things like that, and supplied it to the police. And the police took action after that. They were not able to get it themselves, obviously, but you have millions of people looking at things all day, and they always find something. And those idiot criminals posted it themselves.
That's the old
Ron?
adage. If they were really smart, it'd be much harder for us to catch them.
Ron, I just wanted to say that I found your briefing extremely it was just enlightening. It was very good, very concise, and I really enjoyed you explaining it. Thank you so much for that information. It was just enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you being here and listening. I really do.
And I guess that's a broader question to everybody. So Ron prepared. I don't know if you would call that a formal intel brief or very close to that, Ron. Is that the sort of thing that everybody would like to see on a regular basis here? Just do an analysis of what's going on in the world, try to remove as much confirmation bias and speculation and correlating things that shouldn't be correlating as much as possible, and just get down to the raw facts in a granular manner, so everybody understands the chessboard of what's going on. At least that's what we tried to do. Would you want to see more of that? What do you think? Don't all jump at once. Come on.
Yes.
Sure, BJ.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Yes, that's really great information. Can I just say quickly, Ron? Yeah, I agree with I'm sorry, Lumi. Great summary and all your slides and everything. I can imagine that took like a while to prepare and all that. Amazing stuff. And also your story is really cool because I recognize all the names that you're talking about, Milwaukee and Sheboygan and all that. So it's really cool to hear about like I'm glad you're okay, by the way. And thanks for sharing a local a local operation story.
Yeah, the
good news
Pat
is
is a fellow cheesehead. Pat's a fellow cheesehead.
Go
so
Pack. Go Pack.
Yeah, and just to add on to what's been said, thank you for running the space tonight, Ron. That was an excellent presentation. I enjoyed it, and you gave a lot of good information. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more. And for the other speakers, including Brandon and Deborah, especially with her experience, and of course Andrea, the co-host, and BJ, you two. Excellent space tonight. Thank you for running it. I'll certainly be returning again. Hopefully, I had some value for you all tonight. And thanks for letting me speak. Appreciate it.
All right,
Isabel,
go
ahead. Let's make it short if we can, and then we'll go to Deborah under 2 minutes if you can, and then we'll shut it all down.
Darn it. So I'm always late for the party. I joined the space very late, and I'm just catching up on the topic. So I will try to make it brief. Cut me off if I'm going too long, because I have a lot to share. So I live in a suburb, well, not in a suburb, in a city outside of Seattle, and I'm surrounded by the drug trafficking. I mean, it's infested around here. Our police force is useless. Our state is useless about drug enforcement. A couple of years ago, there was a homeless encampment that popped up behind my house, and it was like an open air drug market. They locked down the street. Neighbors, our neighborhood people couldn't even walk down the street without being assaulted. I was assaulted twice, just trying to walk through my street. I took pepper spray out and a knife just to put out my garbage can. Okay, this is how bad it got. After organizing my neighborhood, my neighbors, and everything else, we found out that they were pressing fentanyl pills in a trailer, the main trailer behind my house. And we actually had the Mexican cartel operating behind my house. I tried to call the FBI. I tried to call the police. Everyone laughed at me. And go figure, a month later, there was a huge bust. They found 2 pounds of fentanyl in a couple of motel rooms right down the road from me. They found fake passports. To make a long story short, basically Mexican cartel was operating behind my house. Now it looks like the Venezuelans have moved in. We've got, I live on a major street, so I watch like drugged out people walking up and down all day long. One day I had enough because there was a guy on the corner right in front of my house. that was panhandling, and I was trying to run him off because he kept pushing like the signal and messing up traffic. And I had enough. I just snapped. I guess I snapped, and I went over to him to, tell him to run along. I tried to call the state patrol because police wouldn't get involved. They said it's a state patrol issue. I'm talking really fast to get my point across. And then the guy finally just couldn't deal with me anymore. And a short time later, he walked over to a gas station right by my house and got into a car. And it was a brand new car, nice looking car, clean looking guy driving it. So I whipped out my camera and I confronted the guy and I said, I need you to take your drugs and your shit off of my street. And he rolled down the window and, stared at me, trying, I don't know, in an intimidating way, if you will. And I asked him, where are you from? And he said, Venezuela, right? So the reason that I came up is if anyone has any ideas about what I can do, because my police department doesn't care, my local city council doesn't care, my governor doesn't care. I don't know where to go anymore to get some control over the drug infestation in my neighborhood. That's what I came up to say. If you have any ideas, please DM me. Thank you for letting me up.
Ron,
before you
Isabel,
go,
I want
this might be a good opportunity for maybe a future space for you to talk about the phenomenon of FIDO, forget it and drive on, and what's happened with the politicization of police forces.
Absolutely. Because at a more strategic level, Isabel, and for everybody listening, a lot of people that get involved in politics for the first time are single idea, single issue voters who are very passionate about certain issues. I think we saw that with like critical race theory and the transsexual issue. People got involved in politics just over that. COVID was another one. And on the West Coast, particularly Northwest with Oregon and Washington, this has been an issue because of the politics of this issue. And I would tell you, Isabella, if you are as passionate as you sound, that may be one place to start, is to getting involved in local politics to change it from the inside. And number two, for people inside or people that have a similar situation to Isabella, I can promise you that not every single one of your neighbors is okay with this. And the Neighbors Against Drugs that I spoke of before you got here was a police-sponsored issue, but you could do it yourself. Signs are cheap. Neighbors Against Drugs was a big success because they printed up these simple political signs that you put in your driveway. We've all seen them with two wires that stick in the grass. And they were in red with black lettering saying Neighbors Against Drugs. They had a syringe and a pipe with a circle and a cross through it. And they just stuck them in their front yards. And you would drive through neighborhoods and virtually every house had a Neighbors Against Drugs sign. Seems like a big nothing burger, except what it does is it tells the drug dealers, your neighbors are watching you. We're watching. And don't be afraid to continually harass your law enforcement into forcing them to do something. You can write letters to the editor, get on talk shows, local talk shows, and plenty of radio shows that have openings for people to talk and speak about this. Write to those talk show hosts and tell them what a problem it is and beg them to start speaking about it. These are all the little things that can make a difference. But from a larger standpoint, I would say I've heard several people here who appear to be somewhat politically inclined. Let this single issue drive you to local politics, to making a difference in your own neighborhood. That's how you change the world, by one neighbor at a time. You eat the elephant one bite at a time.
And
you can get Timmy to start this group together, and then Timmy, you can go knock on Pritzker's door and ask them for donations.
So, just would love to also tell everybody of a personal experience that I've been having in Chicago. I walk around with
Hey, Timmy, just let me real quick say
Yeah.
to Isabel, there's a guy in Seattle. He has a radio talk show, and it's on YouTube too. I think his name is Jason. I'll look up his name. I'm sure he would be interested in speaking to you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Timmy.
Ron. Thank you.